Social Studies, week 34, day 2. We up in it. We're talking about the Constitution and writing it. What? Okay. So agreeing to compromise. So I'm on page 190. So we're going to call this compromise. I'm about to hit I have this much. 1, 2, and I'm right here, compromise. And then I'm going to start my next paper for notes. Okay. The delegates had to decide whether to revise the Articles of Confederation or write a new constitution. And on June 19th the states voted to work towards a new constitution based off the Virginia plan. So, new constitution. And they chose the Virginia plan. You know why? Because bigger states have bigger votes. Okay, so they still had to deal with the difficult issues of representation that divided the large and small states. Okay, so I'm moving on to my second sheet here. This is page 3. I don't know why I wrote 4. This is page 2. So page 3, page 2. Okay, so the compromise. The convention appointed a committee to settle the disagreement. Roger Sherman of Connecticut suggested what would later be called the Great Compromise. So our first vocab word for today is compromise. Okay, so a compromise is a settlement of a dispute by each giving up something. Okay? So a settlement by giving up something. If I'll agree to it, but you have to give up this and I'll give up this, right? Okay. It is a settlement that each party is giving up some demands. Sherman's compromise proposed different representation in the 2 House legislature. In the upper house, the Senate, each Senate would have 2 members, okay? That is, the states would be equal representation. So in the Senate would have, each state would have two representatives, 2 reps, okay? The House, okay, in the upper house, the Senate, okay, so then the House, the lower house, the House of Representatives, the number of seats would vary on the state's population. So larger states would have more representatives. So based on population. So if you have 1 million people, you're going to have more representatives than if you have a couple thousand people. Okay? So, larger states would have more representation. Okay, so that's the compromise, the Senate and the House. Okay, then we have the 3/5 compromise. 3/5 compromise. Okay, so 2 delegates from the South and the North disagreed on whether and how to count each state's enslaved population. Including enslaved people as part of the state's population would increase each Southern Congress. So the Southern states liked this because the Northern states did not, because they don't have slaves, which I honestly agree probably more with the North, because I don't think that if you're not going to let them vote, they shouldn't count as part of your population. But the South wants to count them because then they get higher votes. Does that make sense? So, the South was not happy about this because, okay, so they said, fine, you guys can have them count as a population, but we're going to tax you according to your population. So if you have higher population, then your taxes go up because everyone should be able to pay taxes, right? So the South didn't like that. So as a solution, the delegates agreed that every is what the 3/5 compromise. So part of this compromise is every 5 enslaved people would count as a 3-person in the state's population. This population would be based the basis for setting taxes and representation in Congress. So 3/5. So for every 5 slaves would equal 3 people. So they didn't have to count all of them, but they had to count them because they're going to get taxed on them. So I don't know. It's a compromise, right? Each party gives up something, okay? So the northern states had already banned slave trade. They wanted to prohibit it nationwide. The southern states considered the slavery essential to their economy. The northerners agreed to keep the new Congress from interfering with the slave trade until 1800. So they said Congress would hold off on slavery issues until 1808. That was the compromise. We're going to set up the new government. We're going to get it running. And then put a pin in it. We're going to talk about this slave problem because we're not going to deal with it. They want to get it out banned. But remember, compromise is everyone giving up a little bit. So the North said, okay, fine. We'll put a pin in it. We'll talk about it in a couple of years. Right? 5 years. We're going to talk about it in 5 years. So you guys can have them for 5 years and then we're going to talk about it again. So that's where we're going to talk. We're talking about all about compromise today. And compromise is when each party gives up something. Okay? So tomorrow we're going to finish this lesson.